Welcome to the Heart of CIRS podcast. I'm your hostess, Melanie Joy Pensack, here to share heartfelt conversations with folks recovering from CIRS and with those special people serving the CIRS community. The podcast was created to help bring awareness to the physical, emotional, and mental experiences of folks navigating CIRS day to day. The world needs to know what CIRS folks go through for deeper empathy and understanding. Through stories and vulnerability, we can help the world understand the winding journey of CIRS recovery. Thank you for being here to open your mind and to open your heart. I'm excited to have Gloriana Fontaine here on the Heart of CIRS podcast today. I want to share more about Gloriana's work. She is in the shoemaker camp and a proficiency partner, and I want you to get to know her a little bit better. Gloriana has been helping her clients find their voice, gain greater clarity, relieve stress, and improve their health since becoming a Reiki master in 2015 and a Biofield tuning practitioner in 2017. Gloriana has a judgment-free and centered approach to life and wellness, and a deep understanding and appreciation for the fact that every life is unique. After experiencing CIRS herself and being on the path to recovery, she has expanded her practice to include CIRS coaching as a shoemaker proficiency partner, along with her own unique approach to tuning CIRS patients. Thank you for being here, Gloriana.
Thank you, Melanie.
Just a little bit about why I wanted Gloriana to really be here to share about her Biofield tuning work. I'm very particular about the information that I put out there, and I really don't promote things that I haven't tried myself. I have been working with Gloriana in the Biofield tuning space now 4 sessions we've had together. It's been really powerful for me in a sense of it's been helping to refill my cup that had been very, very depleted after working through CIRS and tick co-infections for 4 years of intense chronic illness. I was very interested when Gloriana popped up as a proficiency partner diplomat. I intuitively felt like this would be a great way to rebuild my energy and my space without having to take another supplement or do something. It was more about receiving and rebuilding through the work that she does. So we'll get more into that as we go along. And I like people to really get an idea of who you are, and you have your own CIRS journey to share. So can you point out some things that you would want people to know about your own CIRS journey that you feel like is relevant because they might see it in themselves, in their own life, or in somebody that they love?
Sure, yeah. I realize looking back now that I've had CIRS my entire life. When I was a little girl, I had chronic migraines. I had growing pains. Yeah, probably around starting really quite young, like 4 or 5 years old. And then when I was 9 years old, I had my first full-blown anxiety attack, sweating, heart palpitation, all the things. I also had earaches and strep throat that are not on the 37 symptoms in the symptom clusters, but the ear, nose, and throat is a big thing with CIRS. Ear infections that showed up, especially when I was in moldy homes. And then I went on through my life, and again, just with the anxiety, but fatigue started to come in college, and UTIs. And then as I got into the corporate world and sat at a desk in a moldy office, I had really bad pain in my right arm and shoulder. And then I said, screw this. And I moved to Hawaii. And I think it was the algae or something over there in Hawaii, some lovely bacteria that gave me chronic diarrhea. I just thought it was normal. It was like, oh, well, it's the tap water here. Everybody has. This must happen to everybody, but it didn't. And when I moved back to New York, which is where I'm originally from, it wasn't going away. So looking back now, all that's quite clear, but it wasn't necessarily the diarrhea that got me to look into something deeper, but it was when my grandmother passed away, the grief that I felt from that, I think was too heavy on my body that was already carrying so much, and I just couldn't carry it anymore. And everything just fell apart. And that falling apart looked like there was lots of grief. And that went into more of the cognitive, mental. I couldn't concentrate. I had no more memory almost at that point, but it was the darker thoughts that took over. And when those darker thoughts took over, I didn't feel like myself. I actually said to myself, these are not my thoughts. And having a background as a shaman, I've been a shaman for 10 years. I said, this is something shamanic that can be removed from me as I would see it in a shamanic perspective. This isn't me. And so I was really glad that I had that background. The world started to get quite dark. My thoughts started to get dark, and I got a bunch of testing done, which was wonderful. I had a great practitioner that diagnosed me with CIRS, and it all started to make sense. Once you see the CIRS profile, you're able to explain everything I just explained looking backwards. Holy moly, this was all the same thing the whole time. And as a shaman, it really spiked my awareness or piqued my awareness because it just toxins can really do a number on the body.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And it sounds like the passing of your grandmother would be what many would consider the priming event, the event that sort of pushed things over the edge, the point of no return. Sometimes, as Christian Navarro Toro says, the load just becomes so much that it starts to be like you're not living with CIRS. CIRS is overtaking everything at that point. Does that feel accurate for you?
Yes. Another reason why it was so pertinent for me was I felt like my grandmother was the person that loved me the most on this planet. Like she was very, very loving, and she and I were like two peas in a pod. We loved each other. I actually spent more time with my grandmother than anybody else growing up, and she had a lot of love to give. And when she passed, my nervous system didn't know where safety was. And that's a big thing with CIRS too.
Mm-hmm.
Not feeling safe or feeling very ungrounded. So even if I didn't have CIRS, I think it really would have shaken me up. But then that paired with CIRS, forget about it. It was definitely
Yeah.
all bets off there.
Yeah, it's such a complicated, intertwined with many different conditions type of illness for sure. But I'm glad that you brought it up because there are other people that I've talked to that also have had either grief or deaths that have been the priming event for a deeper level of CIRS or going into CIRS. And one of them was just really related to even a divorce. So that person didn't die, but it was grief around that sort of loss of person in their life, which is just as impactful. I know other practitioners are seeing this out there, but it's great to voice it for people to keep their eyes and ears aware if, that you start to feel sick after some sort of significant life event or a death, that it can be enough to turn on that genetic difference. So tell us a little bit about your journey into biofield tuning and how did you get to the point of wanting to work with that and use that as a modality in the way that you work with people?
Great question. I think to really answer this question, you have to get a full look at my life. I grew up in a house with my parents. They were very alternative. I mean, my father's been a homeopath for 40 years. My mom's always been in meditation groups and listening to angels. And it was a very metaphysical and energetic parental guidance that I got growing up. I joke that all my mom's friends were psychic. And so by the time I was graduating high school, I had a Rolodex of psychics. This comes into play later. I always joked around with my friends about being hyper aware and being able to see ghosts or things like that. Like I was very intuitive from a young age. I had all these psychics around me and people, very open upbringing. And one day, uh, a friend of mine who'd never believed in any of this growing up, my best friend growing up, his father passed away in 9/11, and there was actually a psychic medium here on Long Island that reconnected him with his family in a way from the other side, and he was flabbergasted. And I had never gone to him. I had heard about him for 10 years, but I never went to see who this guy was. So I said, I'm going to check this guy out and I'm going to make an appointment just for the heck of it. I went to see him and he goes, Gloriana, you're one of us. Come to our meditation class. So from that point on, I did years and years of meditation. But the night I went to the beach and I prayed, and not really prayed, but listened and felt and connected in. And the message I was getting was call Raven. And so I'm like, what? Really? Like my mom's friend from when I was 10? Like, okay. So I reached out to her on Facebook and she said, well, darling, I'm teaching Reiki. Why don't you join my course? And I said, because she had one spot left. Of course she did. And so I joined her course and I did Reiki and I went on to become a medical Reiki master and I'm working in the operating rooms. And I'm still at my full-time desk job and I go out to lunch with my colleagues. And one lady was saying, oh, there's this psychic medium up the road. And so just once again, for shits and giggles, I went to him and he goes, Gloria, you're really meant to be in the healing arts. I'm hearing a lot of dinging, ding, ding. You got maybe try sound therapy. So I said, okay. So I went back to my desk and I looked stuff up and I found a shamanic sound therapist in Vermont and I went to his course. And there was something, it was like, I appreciated it, but it wasn't the ding that I needed. And my mother said, why don't we go up to this conference? So I went up to another conference 2 weeks later, and the closing speaker was Eileen McCusick, and she's the founder of Biofield Tuning. So to answer your question, it's a lot of just trust and being in your center and watching the signs from the universe and following them. I listened to that talk that she gave at that conference and I said, that's what I want to do. I signed up for the course that day and that was in 2016.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm sitting over here smiling. People can't see me, but I love hearing stories like that where things just fall into place and people are guided and led. The women in my family, when I was growing up, were very interested in psychic and healing arts and things, although they didn't do anything with it. They would like talk about it or meet with people. I remember actually with my mother always going to a Chinese restaurant and she would take me to the back corner when she would get her tea leaves read. And I didn't really understand what was going on. And it was always like, don't tell your dad. But it was like a different time. And yeah, so all of that I think is just so sweet. And I'm so glad that you followed and continued to find the modality that really lit you up that you wanted to work with. And many people in the healing arts have different tools in their tool basket, but I know that biofield tuning seems to be one that you really align with.
It is. Just experience it and witness it as a practitioner. It's beautiful.
Tell us about biofield tuning. People who have no idea what it is, no idea who founded it, the basic elevator pitch for biofield tuning.
Yeah. So biofield tuning is a sound therapy method that helps to release stored stress. What is the biofield? The biofield is, imagine you're in a bubble of energy. That's your biofield. It's your energy. And if you can imagine that as a nice juicy grape, and then as we go through life and we have moments of stress and it contracts and it creates tension, that goes into more like a raisin and we can start to get fatigued in that state. And so what we do with the tuning side of biofield tuning is we use tuning forks to help release those pockets of stored stress, emotions, you name it, we can find it in the biofield. And using sound, we help break it up, help move it, and move back into the natural flow so that you go back to being a nice juicy grape rather than a raisin.
I love the food analogies. Anybody who says, well, I don't really know if I have an energy field, if you've ever walked into a room after an argument and sensed that there was something uncomfortable in that space, or the mic drops at a party when somebody says something and everyone gets really quiet. Like there are energetic components to your being as a human that you may not have names for, but that you are perceiving all the time. And how would you talk about energy to somebody that doesn't understand if they have what you're talking about?
Yeah, so anything that has electricity has a magnetic field around it. And so we can measure with an EKG the electrical pulses of your heart, or an EEG, your brain. And we now know your blood has and your bones are piezoelectric. Everything in our body is electric. So if it has electricity, it has a magnetic field. And essentially that's what I'm working in.
So over the years, traumas, challenges, do they weaken the field? Do they get stuck in the field? How is that piece teased out?
They're stored in the field, much like you would think memories are stored in the brain. We see them as being stored in the field. Imagine yourself as your biofield as a vinyl record. We are with the tuning fork, putting the needle on the vinyl record and listening to the song of your life. And where there's a scratch on that record, we might actually hear like a stuckness or a repeat. And that is very much like what is being signaled from your biofield back to your body. So we get stuck in certain cycles in life and certain emotions, and we can't seem to get out of them. With biofield tuning, we take that tuning fork and we hang out there for as long as your body needs to hear that it's in a distortion. It's funny, it melts like butter, baby. It just melts away. And there's actually clarity and harmony that comes in. And you can hear it. Like it's an actual signal from the fork that both you, the client, and I can hear. They tend to actually feel a release in their body at that time, too.
And I will say experientially, having gone through these sessions, you can very much hear the forks. You can very much feel energetically that something has shifted. You might not always be able to put your finger on it, but it might just feel lighter or less tense or less heavy in some part of the body. Even for me, where I've been experiencing the sessions as I'm going through tick-borne co-infection treatment, I can very much feel the aliveness of the co-infections that it is pulling things up to the surface. I literally had a Herxheimer reaction after one of my first sessions with Gloriana. That was no doubt that session had stirred up a lot to be like, hey, there's no space here anymore energetically for this experience.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe play the sound for somebody and talk a little bit about what it's like to do a session over the phone to give people some concept of your work?
Sure. So these sessions can be done in person or at a distance. Either way, I am at my treatment table in my office. And if you're at a distance, we're over the phone. If you're in person, clearly you're here. And we start making sure that that raisin starts to get plumped up. And then we go through your biofield. The edge of your biofield, the beginning of that vinyl record, is your birth and gestation. And as I bring the fork closer to your body, we're getting closer to your current age. If the person on the table is 60, halfway through the field is 30 years old. A quarter of the way through the field is 15 years old. And the edge of the field is birth and gestation. You're laying on the table or on the phone, but you're laying down, and I will again start between your feet and then above your head. We want to get you nice and grounded and juice plump up that grape. And then we go 5-6 feet to the left or to the right of the treatment table, depending on where your body indicates where it wants to work. I'll work off either your feet, your knees, your hips, your belly, solar plexus, abdomen, heart, throat, brow line, or the top of your head. And any of those places correspond to various different emotions that might be stored in the field. So if you really feel like you're speaking and you're not being heard, I'm most likely going to work around the neck and throat area. As if you feel like you are trying to take the next steps in life, trying to move forward, I might work around your feet or knees. The biofield anatomy has been mapped out. It took 20 years of research. And so that's what a biofield tuning session looks like. We have forks that make and have an audible sound. So I'll play those here in just a second. And then forks that have barrels at the top that don't have a sound but a vibration. And those can be placed on the body. They can also be used in the field. You just won't hear them. So here, I'll go ahead and use one of the tuning forks that we have. This is our main fork, the 174 hertz. And I'll play that for you. So that's a 174. And you can hear how it holds the tone. It just has pretty much one mid-tone. If I'm in your biofield with that fork and we come up on a time in your life that was quite turbulent, that fork will go into either an overtone or an undertone. The overtone being alarm, shock, something like a car accident, for example. The undertone will drain out really quickly and it will be like water in the desert, feeling drained, overworked, even sad, depressed. Pretty much, you get the feeling like it's drained out, very much the same way that music evokes emotion. I'm quite literally listening to the song of your life based on whether the tuning forks going into an overtone, undertone, or midtone. And ideally, what we would like is midtones. I'll go ahead and play one other fork for you. And that fork has a bit of a lifting sense, right? It's a little bit, we call it like a warm hug. So the first fork was more of the workhorse. We're gonna like move through stuff. And the other one adds a little bit more vibrancy and love and sweetness. So depending on what we are encountering in the field, we have various different forks for the project.
Thank you for playing those forks. I think that's interesting for people to hear more what it could sound like and set up a little bit too. You're doing these sessions either in person or on the phone. It might be an hour, it might be 2 hours. And you, like she said, can quite literally be laying there. And there are times when she's working through your ages that she might ask questions like, did something happen at this age or did something happen here? And you might remember or you might not. And so I think it's really an interesting modality because you don't have to tap into the difficulty. Like if it's there, it will be sensed and worked through. And it doesn't mean that you have to, in a therapy session, literally relive everything. It's just working through the energetic fingerprint, is my understanding as well.
Yes. A good example of that is birth and gestation. Most people don't remember their birth, but they'll say, wow, it's noisy here. Or maybe, do you know your birth story? And oh my goodness, I almost died. My mom almost died. Great example of noisy at the edge of the field. You don't remember, but it's still there.
Can you share a little bit your viewpoint on why you think it's a complementary modality for people with CIRS going through the protocol?
Yes. I think part of what drains us as patients is an influx of information and supplement schedule and making sure everything's clean and washing everything and the air filter. There's just so much rearranging of our life that we have to do that it's very helpful to stop and take a break and relax. And biofield tuning, we always say the forks don't lie. Like the forks are going to feel it, like you just said. And so I have developed my own method of tuning CIRS patients. And part of that method is letting the patient fall asleep and just giving their nervous system a little love and attention and letting them recharge without having to think about it.
Yeah. I see that as being so valuable as well. And having gone through the sessions, that's really what the focus has been on lately, is because when you're going through SIRS and then you discover, oh, there's also tick-borne co-infections here, and you've been hammering at your body with antimicrobials and antibiotics and all of these like mixtures of medications and supplements, the body needs sustenance to keep going. And I know for me, I was feeling very depleted. And to just have something that I've done for the recovery that builds up my ability to be more resilient and to keep going has been like a real gift. And like you said, to be able to just rest and relax and not necessarily do, and just receive some internal and external support, really.
Yeah, for me, healing from SIRS is twofold. It's A, getting toxins out, but B, recharging yourself. If you're a battery and your phone is at 2%, you're going to hurry up and plug that phone in if you want it to keep working. And so that's what biofield tuning is, in my perspective. It's the charger to the phone. It's helping us recharge our voltage, our capacity, our battery. And so that we are not only getting rid of toxins, but we're also charging up our chi, our life force, our vitality.
Can you share a short story or just reflection about somebody that has had SIRS that's you've been working with and how it's impacted them?
Sure. Two stories come to mind. One patient had migraines, and I worked on her once, and her migraines went away for 2 weeks, and then they came back. And I bring this story up because they came back. I had tuned her that day for a second session, but she also started VIP that day. So we didn't know which one it was. So I bring that up because biofield tuning is fabulous. I just ask that if you're coming to me, don't start VIP the same day, or any other medications for that matter, the same day or within a few days, because we want each thing to get its attention and see what it does for our body.
Yeah.
The second story is I had this wonderful woman. She was 66 years old. And she came to me. She hadn't been diagnosed with SIRS. She was chronically fatigued and she needed to get back to work, but she just couldn't because she was so tired. So we did 3 sessions. And by the end of 3 sessions, she was working 3 days a week. And then she came back to me for 4 more sessions, and she was able to work 6 days a week. And of course, she took her one day off, right? Now, this woman had been sick since she was 6 years old. And she had, probably like many people listening, and you and I, got the runaround, every diagnosis under the sun, and she didn't want to hear from anybody anymore. She's like, I'm just going to do this. And it worked. And by the 7th session, at that point, I had gotten diagnosed with SIRS. And I said, hey, girl, why don't you look into this? And she did. And she went to a SIRS practitioner, and she is thriving.
Yes. I love it.
And when I asked her and I said, what did I do for you? She said, Gloriana, you gave me the energy to just look into it.
Yeah.
If you had told me on day 1 about SIRS, I wouldn't have had the energy to even entertain it.
Yeah.
But by 7 sessions, I was rocking and rolling, and she had energy. She was working, and she had the voltage to look into it and then heal.
That's so powerful, because people who have had a more significant presentation of SIRS will definitely understand that fatigue, the brain fog, it just sucks you in, it drains you completely. And there's minimal energy to do anything else other than your daily living tasks. That gave her the ability to then pursue the diagnosis and keep going. And she's got a lot of time to make up for now. She's living life.
He is.
It's great. This next question is a bit of a complex question, and we could probably have a whole entire podcast about this question. But I know through my own experience over the years in the healing arts world, this is a problem that people are missing CIRS and don't know about it. Because in my own experience, then people get put into this category of you must have something underlying that you haven't addressed, like that it's you're the problem, that you don't have self-love for yourself. You need to work on that, and that's going to heal you. And while that's a beautiful sentiment for people that have the genetic predisposition to CIRS, you're not getting around it. So that particular population is, I think, getting misidentified in the healing arts world by Reiki masters, shamans, meditation teachers, you name it. I think they're getting missed. So what are your feelings about that? And what do you want people, particularly in the domains that you are specialized in, to know about CIRS? What red flags should they be seeing with a client that they should be thinking, hey, this is CIRS?
Thank you for asking this question. It's something I feel really strongly about. I have opinions, so much so that I created a course for practitioners and I teach about CIRS and how it relates to energetic things that we could see as practitioners. So we have to understand that we are human, electric, and biochemical. So while we have a biofield, we also have a body. They're working together. And we can't just say everything is energy, even though, yes, in many ways it is, but we also have a physical body, right? And I think people forget, and it doesn't help that doctors don't know about CIRS, but people forget that there's a link to each other. For my story, when my grandma passed away, I could not get out of depression and grief. And it wasn't until I started taking the toxins out of my body that I was able to feel myself. So basically, an energy, it's like the toxins also have an energy, and that energy is to live off your life force and to drain your battery. I mean, mold literally breaks down plants and trees and gives it back to the soil to create new life. It's like mold is Robin Hood and it's stealing from the from where there's a richness of energy to a depletion of energy. And I went from being rich to poor and stolen by Robin Hood, so to speak, but by these toxins. And you can't blame the person who was robbed because the robber came into your home. If you're a body worker, very often there's like their inflammation in the body. You can tell like their lymphatics are backed up, and you hear a similar story every time. That's when I would start to say, just recommend a VCS test. It's $15. It's at home. It's on a computer. There's a particular client that's popping into mind where it's the same story every time. And I've worked with her for a year. And I had to say, and now while she's gotten better, she has more energy. We're moving forward. There's the strand, like I'm watching her improve, but she's not really bright. That battery just can't get charged above a certain number. I had to ask her to get a VCS test, and she's going to be treated for CIRS.
I think that's so important for people to hear. When you're working with people, you expect them to be making gains, and it doesn't always happen quickly. But for those people that just are stuck, or they're not moving forward, or it's way slower than you would expect. I like think back to the things that I used to say to my meditation teachers and spiritual people that I worked with. Oh my gosh, if one of them had known about CIRS earlier on, I would say things like, I just don't understand why I've been doing all this personal work and I've been doing the trauma work and I've been doing the psychological work. Like, why am I not feeling better? Like, why don't I have energy? I went down the rabbit hole of, okay, well, if there's something here that needs resolved that is subconscious, like, I'm a meditation person. I'm like, okay, let's dive in. I'll go for it. I want to know and clear it and move it forward and have more freedom in my life. But I couldn't do that. There was still always like something lingering. And the genetics was a part of it. It was the environment being the player with my genetics.
Yeah. One of the things I say to my clients is I can't kick out the burglar, but leave the front door open.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing. You're going home to a moldy environment. That's a prime example of that. I'm tuning whatever you name the emotion, but if you're going back into that moldy environment, you're not helping anything. It's not helping the body. It's continuing to drain your battery. And similar to you, Melanie, I had a similar path where after my grandmother passed away, I went on meditation retreats. I went all the way to Ireland and to California, and I spent a stupid amount of money trying to figure it out. It must be my fault. No matter what I did, I still felt like poo. And so I have a really, really big place in my heart for folks going to energy practitioners and being somewhat blamed for not getting through. And it got to the point I have a client who she went to therapists and healers for 3 or 4 months, and it was actually the mental damage of being blamed. You're just not loving yourself enough. You're not meditating hard enough. That mental and emotional damage from that was worse than her CIRS. And she's currently in CIRS treatment.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that myself going through those communities, and I think it's dangerous, actually. And meditation's not meant for that. Meditation is a tool to be able to quiet your mind, to meet your truer self, to find peace and calm and recharge. It's a support to help us through to improve our lives. And it's not alone going to cure your CIRS or cure your chronic illness. It's more a tool to help you get through. So let's switch to some questions that I love to ask people that come through the podcast. What do you wish that people in the world knew about CIRS?
I wish people knew what it was. I wish they knew what it was and that it was a real thing and that it very much can cause multiple symptoms. And as we know, in multiple systems, and that no two CIRS patients can look alike. You don't have to, and not to judge a book by its cover. There are bodybuilders with CIRS, and there's folks with obesity with CIRS and their leptin resistance. I'd like the world to know that it exists, really, quite frankly.
That's a popular answer for that question.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
I could think of something else.
Oh, I think that's important. That's the true answer. That's what we would most like people to know, that it's there. What do you wish that non-CIRS doctors knew about CIRS?
I wish they knew how to spot a CIRS patient, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. I think me alone, just in the last year, I've had 25 to 30 people now working with CIRS practitioners. It's very easy to spot if you see somebody with symptoms in various body systems. You have a CIRS patient, really. Like if you see that somebody is fatigued or just, you could see it in their eyes. There's a fatigue, almost a sadness, or a checking out. Most importantly, I really would love psychologists to know that if there's depression, if there's suicidal ideations, if there's disassociation, derealization, those things are a immediate go get tested for CIRS.
Yeah. Check your environment immediately. If you could have one magic wish granted, what would you ask to happen specifically within the CIRS community?
I want to billion given to CIRS research.
Love that. May that be so. And what keeps you hopeful day to day?
An inner knowing that this state of illness that we're currently in is not who we truly are. And my inner belief that this is just a blip in my timeline and it's not a forever ball and chain.
Fully relate to that. Thank you, Gloriana, so much for your time and your talents, your gifts, and for being willing to bring those into the shoemaker community and to be able to work with these patients. It's a lot to step into. I'm so glad that you've decided to take that on and to share with the world and to really support people in a way that I feel is highly beneficial and supportive to CIRS patients. So if anybody out there has resonated with this idea of wanting to recharge their batteries and gain more strength to get through the shoemaker protocol with more resilience and energy, I really encourage you to reach out to Gloriana and schedule some sessions and work with her and see in your own experience if it works for you. That's what we say in meditation. Come along and just try it out, see what happens. Decide for yourself. Tell us about how people can stay in touch with you and get in touch with you with your work.
Thank you, Melanie. You can go to glorianafontaine.com. So like Gloria with an N-A at the end. GLORIANAFONTAINE.com.
Okay, great. Any final words?
Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to say. Back to the belief system. I believe that God is good, nature is good, and that there's really bright light and voltage and everything, whether it's the sunshine or plants or food. And getting outside, looking at the sun, or even looking at the sun from your window if you can't get outside. There is life and life force everywhere. And if you can focus on the life force rather than the drain, I think that could really help.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you for listening and for your kind attention. To keep in touch, follow the Heart of CIRS podcast on Instagram. You can visit melaniepensack.com/the Heart of CIRS to donate. Your generosity helps to keep this podcast growing. May the awareness of CIRS spread far and wide, helping to change millions of lives for the better.